Hi everyone, this is Counseling 2500, Chapter 8, Group Counseling. So the replacement of consistent social contact with friends and coworkers via technology will create a greater need for interpersonal communication on a person-to-person basis. So what that is saying is because we are all on our technology, our social skills are not that great anymore. Or let's talk about the future generation, the Gen Zs and so forth, where a lot of people really don't talk to other people as much. And so you'll probably hear a lot of the baby boomers or Gen X go, wow, these people are so rude when they talk. And part of that is because actually there's just not as much practicing of communication in a polite way, in a responsible way, and a respectful way. Facilitators must be skilled in catalyzing a therapeutic climate in a group and in monitoring therapeutic factors inherent in the group. So in that sense then, we now have to, as a group, let's say facilitator, have to also pay attention to all those other things as well that's going on because of technology and other circumstances as well that prevent people from being able to communicate in a responsible and respectful way. So let's talk first a little bit about the history of group work. In 1947, the National Training Laboratory, or the NTL, in group development of the National Education Association, did something that was actually kind of unique, and it was called training groups or T groups. And they were basically using themselves as experimental subjects within a group. Okay, so like let's all get together and let's see how the group dynamic works. And it was a place where they created a safe place for group members to explore their own behaviors, feelings, and responses of others to them as people separate from social, work, and family roles. So they're getting together and kind of just like getting to know each other talk and also observe and understanding what the dynamic looks like as this group. And basically, it was very popular. And so it started to spread to universities as well as other settings. In the 1960s and 70s, social upheaval and questioning started to happen quite a bit. If you know anything about history, and I hope you do, of American history anyways, we had a lot of things that dealt with civil rights groups, as well as politics. The war was happening, the Vietnam War was happening during this time period as well. So there are a lot of things that people were talking about and were a lot more socially conscious during this time period because of it. So mental health centers conducted more and more group sessions for clients in the counseling education. So now we're talking about, oh, we recognize that group counseling actually might be something very beneficial for some people who need it. Association for Specialists in Group Work was formed in 1974 and then joined the American Counseling Association, or the ACA. And then in the 1980s, interest in group work with special populations that required more education as well started to emerge. And we're talking about people with alcoholism, adult children of alcoholics, incest victims, adult molested as children, persons who are overweight, under-assertive persons, victims of violence, elderly, dealing with death and other losses, eating disorders, smokers, and then victims of the Holocaust. So these groups started to pop up during the 1980s where people wanted to talk about the feelings and the struggles and the barriers that they were going through. And then in the 1990s, now that we've had, a good amount of time to develop and practice and observe how group counseling can be very effective, there were new standards in group counseling that were created. So that means talking about knowledge, skills, and then also having supervised experience in group therapy as a professional. So if you guys are planning on becoming group therapists or group counselors, is that there's actually a whole standard now, especially the things that were developed in the 1990s that have been refined since then. So we're talking about understanding the principles of group dynamics. So what are the points in group dynamic? Group leadership style. So how you approach your group can mean something. Theories of group counseling methods, approaches used for other types of group work, ethical considerations for group. And then that's a really important part too, right? Because once it goes from one individual face-to-face with a counselor to a group of people, like let's say 8 people, privacy becomes an issue because as a therapist, they can promise confidentiality, but we cannot promise as a professional that your group members are also going to do it. We're going to encourage it, but we can no longer guarantee privacy. And then other things as well. Groups in the 21st century, which is where we are now, technology brought groups into chat rooms, live meeting rooms, and then also listservs. And so we are talking about basically now adding computers into it and people having group therapy chats. Let's say a support group on Zoom or something like that. So support groups now talk about recovering addictions, cancer survivors, eating disorders, Alzheimer's caregivers, and the list goes on and on and on. But these are some of the suggestions that the book had brought up. Now let's talk about the different types of groups. The three that we're going to define are group therapy, group counseling, and group guidance. Although in the real world, they might be used interchangeably, which means that they can be used, to mean the same thing. Actually, in the field, when you actually talk about it, there's actually defined definitions for each one. Okay, so group therapy is longer term, more remedially and therapeutically focused, and more likely to be facilitated by a facilitator with doctoral level preparations and more clinical orientation. So let's just break down a couple of the words in there just in case you don't know what it means. Remedial basically means trying to solve a problem, right? A cure or something because we recognize that there is a problem. But these are longer term, right? And so it will require more experience in education. There's group counseling, more developmental focus on conscious problems, so they're more short-term issues, by the fact that it's not aimed at major personality changes. So it might be a little bit more about, like breakups or something like that, like everyday problems, as opposed to ones where there might be actual mental health issues going in. Although in group counseling, there can be depression and all that stuff as well. Okay, and then there's group guidance, classroom groups in kindergarten through 12, setting in which the leader presents information or conducts mental health education. So this is more about teaching people how to learn how to cope or how to live and survive when there are traumas or when there are difficulties in our lives, right? So it's kind of teaching you to have the tools then to be able to deal with it later on. There are also task work groups. Group workers who specialize in promoting the development and functioning of tasks. So the word task basically kind of is like a job or a duty, right? So this is a kind of group together that gets together to try to resolve a problem or a job that they want to accomplish. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lot of counseling in it, but it uses group dynamics to be able to function. Work groups seek to support such groups in the process of improving their function and their performance. So they get together so they can improve themselves. Use principles of group dynamics, organizational development, which is basically work-related stuff, and then team building to enhance group member skills in task accomplishments and maintenance. So how do we improve ourselves and then keep on improving ourselves consistently? So the example that the book gives is being a member of a search committee in a work setting for the purpose of interviewing and hiring. So you're going to get together as a group, let's say at your office, and you're going to meet an applicant. You're going to have a conversation with them and then try to understand them and then see if they can fit into the workplace culture that you guys have at your organization. Then there is guidance and psychoeducational groups. Educate group participants who are informationally deficient, which is kind of a adult way of saying basically people who don't have the information to help themselves, right? So we're talking about people who might not be able to cope with bullying, developmental transitions, going through puberty or going from high school to college. Those are considered transitional periods. And then of course, stress management. Functioning adults who are at risk for an environmental threat, such as drug use or HIV, so they might be sexually promiscuous, might go into this group so that they can be educated about drug use or about HIV or STDs in general. Approaching a developmental transition point, such as new parents. So becoming new parents, they're going to probably need some help and guidance, right? So this would be a really good group or effective group for them to join. Of course, and also in the midst of coping with a life crisis such as suicide of a loved one. Okay, for some people, that's really important to know that they're not alone when it comes to losing, let's say, a child or a husband or a wife or a partner, a sibling, or whatever it is. The goal for this group is basically to prevent the future development of dysfunctional behaviors. So by teaching them, educating them how to deal with these stuff, then they're going to be able to not get, let's say, major depression disorder or something very severe, or start to do drug use. Maybe they're drinking now, but they might be vulnerable to also start to, I don't know, smoke crack or whatever. And then hopefully this will help them when it comes to preventing them from doing those things. Counseling groups. So like we said earlier when we were defining group therapy, group counseling tends to be a little bit more of everyday type problems, right? So it focuses on assisting group participants to resolve the usual, yet often difficult problems of living. Simulate interpersonal support and group problem solving. So what that is doing is going to teach them how to talk to other people so that they can help each other resolve problems. Develop their existing interpersonal problem-solving competencies so they can become more able to handle future problems of a similar nature. So instead of having one-on-one, you're going to have, let's say, build a network of support where you can then talk to other people about problems that you might be having, which then can hopefully be resolved through group talking and group interactions. The concerns in this area is non-severe. So we're talking about maybe careers, educational, personal, interpersonal, again that means communicating with other people, building friendships, social, and then of course developmental. So although it can be very severe, these are considered non-severe when comparison to people with, let's say, with mental health issues, right? Okay, psychotherapy groups. Facilitators help remediate in-depth psychological problems or reconstruct major personality dimensions. So when it comes to psychotherapy, it's going to be a little bit more intense. And we were talking about how, they might need to have a doctoral degree, a PhD, become a doctor to work with this group because they might need to know more about neurological issues, medication, and a little bit more of the severe mental health issues that can come up, like bipolar disorder. However, I will say this, sometimes in group counseling, you can also deal with those things as well. But in psychotherapy, like we said before, sometimes the terms are interchangeable. Here, we are being very specific, right? So we're talking about acute or chronic mental or emotional disorders characterized by marked distress, impairment in functioning, or both, okay? There's also developmental stages in groups. So what this is saying is, when you start a group, something might happen. In the middle of it, this might happen. At the end, this might happen. So that's what it's talking about, the developmental stages. So Bruce Tuckman's stage model of group development is about storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. It's very catchy, right? It rhymes-ish and stuff like that. And it's actually used a lot in workplace scenarios as well. But the book also talks about Capuzzi, Gross, and Stauffer's, which is the definitive stage, the personal involvement stage, the group involvement stage, and then enhancement and closure stage. And we're going to focus on this for the rest of this lecture because this is the one that the book really does focus on, okay? And again, there are many different types of developmental stages and group theories, okay, models, but the one in the book that we're talking about is going to be the Capuzzi, Gross, and Stauffer one. All right, definitive stage, definitive, just remember the word define. Define means trying to find a meaning, right? So this is the first step. How each person in the group defines the purpose of the group. So they're going to talk about whether or not they feel like they're going to be able to make a commitment, how involved are they going to be in it, and of course the degree of self-disclosure he, she, or they is willing to do. So that means how much am I going to be willing to share in this group? So this is again stage one. You're going to think about these things as you enter into group, right? You're going to start to ask yourself, whom can I trust in this group? Where will I find the support? Will others knowing about me hurt me? Because again, we don't want to be vulnerable because we're scared of change, right? And then how much of myself am I willing to share? Again, that talks about disclosure. How much are you willing to share? Because when you share your deep secrets, you're becoming vulnerable. And unless you have a safe space, being vulnerable can be very scary, right? So again, stage one is all about trying to understand ourselves and define what's going on. During this time, we're going to have feelings of anxiety. We're going to be really excited. We're going to be very nervous. And of course, we're going to start self-protective language increases. So you're going to start to talk about and think about, hey, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm not going to get hurt in this group? right? Because we're afraid. We don't know what this group is really about. It's new. Small talk as members test the water. So again, they're going to start to, chit chat a little bit just to get to know other people. Counselor needs to know how to deal with trust, support, safety, self-disclosure, and confidentiality. And those are things that you actually do need to set the boundaries for at the beginning of group counseling, just like in one-on-one counseling, right? It's called informed consent. So all of this stuff does have to happen at the beginning stages. Now let's talk about how this first stage could be enhanced, which basically means improved or made better, or impeded by, which basically means somehow slowed down or blocked for some reason. The group's makeup, which means the age, gender, number, values, attitudes, or socioeconomic status. So I'll give you an example. If you had a group meeting, a group counseling group with someone who's 10, someone who's 35, and someone who's 70, do you think that group, if you envision it, would be something that would have things in common so that they can talk to or relate to? Not necessarily, right? So again, the group's makeup will either be good or bad for the group. So you do need to think about that. There's also the leadership style of the counselor. Is it an active person, a passive person, an autocratic, or democratic? So what kind of leader? Do they tell the group what to do, or is it much more like, hey, what do you guys want to do? And depending on, how they are, that could also make it better or worse. There's also the group setting. Is it a formal setting or an informal setting where people can relax? Maybe they can cuss a little bit. Maybe they can, be a little bit slower and stuff like that. It'll be okay. It also depends on whether or not it's an uncomfortable group or a relaxed group as well. There's also the personal dynamics the individual brings to the group. So each member, are they shy, aggressive, verbal, or nonverbal? And maybe a mix of it is actually going to be good, because if you have 8 people who are shy and don't want to talk, it might be problematic, right? But let's say that there's half shy and half, let's say, verbal. Maybe the shy people will learn how to verbalize a little bit more, and maybe the ones who are so verbal or talkative might learn to also sit back and listen as well. The individual's perceptions of trust and acceptance from other group members and from the group leader is also really important. So does the group trust the group leader and the members? And the other way around, does the group leader trust that the group is doing well together? All those things are things that you as the leader, let's say, are going to have to screen for and consider. See? So it's going to be a little bit different, right? So these are why people start to focus and learn and dissect group counseling, because there is a different dynamic when it comes to working with 8 people as opposed to just one person. So now we're going to move into the personal involvement stage. So that's stage 2, member to member interaction. They'll start to talk to each other. They'll start to share their personal information. Confrontation with other group members. So let's say that when they're having a discussion, one member might challenge another member and say, you know what, I think you're basically beating around the bush right now, and I think you're actually avoiding the problem. So now you don't need the therapist, the counselor, the leader to actually do this, because they're going to start to build trust and then start to actually challenge each other. And that's really great for you as a leader to observe, because it's showing that one person's learning how to talk to the other person, and that it's not always about the power person, which is the leader who is challenging them, but the actual other people as well. And if you think about it as this group can see their own personal friends and family members at home to be something similar as well, because they might have also someone who will challenge them as well. There's also going to be power struggles during this time period, and individuals growing identity as a group member. So they're going to start to identify themselves in this group, and they're going to say, this is the type of person I am, or whatever it is, right? So during this time period, people might use phrases such as I am, blah, 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 I fear, whatever, I need, whatever, and then of course I care, blah, 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 right? So during this time period, we're talking about action, reaction, and then interaction, right? So you're listening to other people, so that's you're going to react, but you're also going to share yourself, so you're acting, and then you're going to have a mix of both, which is interaction. During this time period, you're also going to examine fight and flight exists as each person tries to create a role in the group. So they're going to now try to establish themselves in this group to tell other people who they are in this group. So this is the time where people might have discussions, just arguments and stuff like that. As long as it's not violent and as long as it's helpful, it's good to have some disagreements in the group because then they can start to talk it all out as well. Of course, then we're going to move into group involvement stage. So after personal involvement stage, people are going to start to self-evaluate, self-assess of behavior, which basically means, when you're at home outside of group, you're going to start to say, hey, you know what? So-and-so had mentioned the way that I react to certain things. I wonder if I really do that, or if I do, I can't believe people saw that. I thought maybe no one realized that I was doing this. So you start to really assess how you behave. You're going to examine your attitudes, your values, method used in relating to others, and then members channeling their energies to better meet group goals and purposes. So now they say, oh, you know what? Everyone here needs help. I need help. You need help. I'm going to help them. They're going to help me. And then you recognize that. And then it becomes very interactive. Cooperation and cohesiveness replace conflict and confrontation. So now that you've all kind of settled down and you understand everyone, you're going to go, you know what, we're here to help each other. So you're going to start to cooperate and be more cohesive, right? Members are confident in their roles. They know who they are now. They've been able to establish and define who they are to the group. So now they're going to look for each other for maybe strengths and stuff like that. So they might say to one member, hey, I know that you like to do this and I want to learn more about how to do that, right? And then they'll start to help each other and talk to each other. Increasing role clarification, intimacy, problems exploration, group solidarity, compromise, conflict resolution, and risk taking. So now you're going to start to take do these things that might be a little scary because it's unknown to you, right? And because of your group interactions, you're going to feel a bit more braver because you're going to also see other people do it as well, right? We're talking about learning how to make things more clear if you're confused, to be able to ask for those things, to be more vulnerable, to be able to try to explore, how to solve a problem. Because maybe other people have been able to do it, but you haven't. So you're able to now start to talk and ask about those things. The members grow protective of other group members and the group itself, right? So they start to go, we're a family. We're here to get together and to resolve our problems. So if we need help, we're going to be able to ask each other because we trust each other. And of course, the last phase or the last stage would be the enhancement and closure stage. So it's most exhilarating and the saddest aspect of group work because we're evaluating, right? So we reevaluate of the group's process and individual and group assessment of change. So this is a time where we start to review, like we're talking about, hey, this is where we started and this is where we are now, right? So we're evaluating the entire process that we've just gone through. Members have an opportunity to share significant growth experiences during group. So this is a time period where they're going to basically give and receive feedback, and it's generally really positive. They might do statements like, I was like this, but now I am like this, right? Or I felt this way, now I feel this way. Or I didn't, blah, 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 now I do this stuff. Or I couldn't do this before, but now I can. So these are really great if you want to give out either a worksheet or a theme during the end process to have them each actually verbalize these things. Then they actually get to see how they evaluate themselves as well as other people in the group. Sadness comes from leaving an environment that provided safety, security, and support in individuals who offered encouragement, friendship, and positive feedback. Can a person be able to replace what he or she or they have found in group and be able to take what was learned in the group and apply it elsewhere? So that's really important, right? This is now the period where you're like, we're going to stop this group now because I think we've all achieved what we needed or tried to as much as we want. Can you now do this on your own? And if not, maybe you guys can get together and create your own groups or support networks. Maybe meet once a week at a restaurant or a coffee shop and just check in and talk to each other. You guys can do that. You no longer need to come into therapy for it because now you build bonds with each other. Here are some characteristics when it comes to group facilitator. So this is about you now, right? Presence, emotionally present and shares experiences. So you have to be there as well. You can't just watch them. You're going to be part of the group as well. Personal power is self-confidence and the realization of the influence a leader has on a group. Because it's true. As a teacher, I know that I have influence and power over you guys as students, right? Because I'm the one with the knowledge, although you are all also very smart as well. But for this specific course, I have this knowledge that I'm trying to give to you, right? So we recognize that there's a power to there. There's also courage. Take risks by expressing their reactions to aspects of group process. So be participatory. Just go, wow, you know what? I wasn't expecting that to be shared from so forth and so on or whatever. But that has now showed me, something else, blah, blah, blah. So you have to also interact with the group as well. Willingness to confront oneself. Role model, right? Confront, convey empathy, and achieve a good balance of starting off interactions and letting it lead the discussion. So you, as a leader, need to be able to demonstrate how to behave, maybe. Be able to confront clients or specific members in the group for maybe something that they might have been doing that's wrong or inappropriate. Convey empathy. Again, be empathetic to your members. And then so forth and so on, because you're the one who is going to have to lead the conversation if they don't are not ready to talk yet. And remember the first stage, that is the stage where you're going to have to talk the most. And again, this is the reason why I always tell you guys, if you guys don't like to talk to people, you might not necessarily be in the right field. Sincerity and authority. So there's genuine interest in the welfare of the group and each person in the group. There's also a sense of identity, able to clarify personal values, meanings, goals, and expectations of the self before helping others clarify their values. So again, when you guys are taking these classes in college, like Counseling 2250, we're trying to make you understand who you are. Because if you are not, how are you going to be able to balance 8 people in this group, right? And then, of course, belief in the group process and enthusiasm. Positive and enthusiastic about the healing capacity of groups and their belief in the benefits of a group experience. If you personally do not believe that group therapy works, it's going to be really hard to try to make group therapy work, right? So you need to believe in it. So that means maybe being educated, or actually definitely being educated, reading about it, practicing it, so you understand how powerful group therapy can be. The last characteristics of group facilitating is these 3, which are inventiveness and creativity. That is spontaneous in their approach to a group, can often facilitate better communication, insight, and personal growth than those dependent on structured interventions and techniques. So what that is saying is, when you are starting out as a group facilitator or group counselor, you're probably going to refer to this chapter and other chapters that you've learned throughout your educational experience, how to do it. Oh, maybe I need to do an icebreaker at the beginning. Maybe I need to do this. I'm going to give them this activity. I'm going to give them that activity. And that's really great and all, but that's very structured, right? And sometimes a group will be a little bit less structured. So then you need to learn how to basically walk on your tiptoes. Is that the phrase? Where basically, or be on your toes, I'm sorry, where basically, something might come up and you're like, oops, that was unexpected, but you need to learn how to work along with that when it comes along, right? I'll give you an example. As a teacher, I have these lectures, but, when we're in a typical classroom, pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, some of the students might ask me the weirdest questions or the most inappropriate questions and stuff, and I have to be able to react to it, resolve it, and be okay. Will I always succeed? Probably not, but it's something that you need to be prepared for. There's also stamina. That is, track several group clients simultaneously, connect group members with each other, and use appropriate counseling skills and techniques, and is also very safe. So stamina basically means long lasting, right? So can you pay attention to 8 people talking kind of almost all at the same time? Because you're going to have to write notes about everyone as well, right? So you're going to need to be able to be energized and know that this is a marathon, not a sprint, okay? There's also commitment to self-care. Must be aware of how much energy it takes to facilitate groups, and also the fact that you can also burn out. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to be honest. When I teach a Zoom class and I have 80 students in my class, I am exhausted at the end of my 3-hour lecture or conversation or class. Why? Because I'm trying to put all my energy in paying attention to everyone if I can, and try to look for who's talking, try to facilitate this lecture, try to see people's facial expressions, all the stuff all at one time. And it's really exhausting. So you definitely need to take time afterwards to relax and take care of yourself. Like I'll treat myself to a nice dinner if it's a really long day of work, right? Like, normally I'll eat whatever I make, but I might go out and buy something nice that I don't have to eat, cook and treat myself because that makes me feel good, that makes me relax, and all that other good stuff. So the book also talks about group facilitation, the curative factors. Curative basically means kind of like finding the right treatment, right? So you need to be able to install hope into the people in the group, be able to talk about things in a universal way, meaning that, this happens to more than just you as an individual. It happens to many people. Imparting of information, being able to give out this information. Altruism, basically willing to help other people just because you want to, not because you're going to get something back. You help people because you want to. The corrective recapitulation of the primary family group. So basically trying to get this family back together if it's a group, right? If it's a group dynamic, a family dynamic, is how to help this family get back together and be healthy. Development of socializing techniques, imitative behavior, interpersonal learning, group cohesiveness, catharsis. Catharsis is having a breakthrough. Like, let's say that you have a client that is in denial for having, let's say, a drinking problem. The catharsis is when the client goes, oh my God, I do have addiction. Something like that. They might be screaming up and down. It really does depend. But some people are like so shocked because they really didn't realize it until they saw other people or whatever. And that's what catharsis is, that breakthrough moment. And of course, existential factors such as, I feel so alone, I'm suffering, but not knowing that other people are also suffering and feel alone at the same time as well. So be able to know and how to resolve these things in group is really important. And this is the reason why you're learning. And the last section that I'm going to cover in this lecture will be group facilitation interventions. I want you guys to read interventions in the textbook for examples and detailed explanation. And the reason why I'm not actually going to cover it all in this is because the book does a really good detailed explanation that will not be effective for me to summarize, right? Each section only has like a little small paragraph, but it's 3.5 pages or so worth of it. So I would basically be copying everything from the book onto here. So there's really no point. So I'm just going to read these different sections. And what happens is in the book, it gives you an example of the situation and also how to respond. So the actual scripts that you would use in group counseling to facilitate this problem or deal with this problem. Okay. So number 1 is the group member speaks for everyone else. 2, an individual speaks for another individual in the group. 3, a group member focuses on persons, conditions, or events outside of the group. 4, someone sees the approval of the leader or group member before or after speaking. 5, someone says, I don't want to hurt her feelings, so I won't say what I'd like to say. 6, a group member suggests that their problems are due to someone else. 7, an individual suggests, I've always been this way. 8, someone in the group suggests, I'll wait and it will change. 9, discrepant behavior appears. Discrepant basically means inconsistent. Okay. 10, a member bores the group by rambling. 11, a member responds with a rehearsed or often used statement. 12, a member remains silent or non-participatory. 13, a member's expectations for the group are not met. 14, a member of the group wants all of the airtime. And then 15, a group member blocks the expression of intense emotions by other members of the group. So you can see all these things that might happen in a group and will happen, let me just tell you. It happens also in classes, right? So I want you guys to read these, I think it's about 3.5 pages, where it really gives you an amazing breakdown of all of this stuff and what to say for each of those things as well.